All right, members, folks, let's go ahead and get started. Apologize for the delay, but this time of year, it's similar to March Madness at basketball. It's like March Madness here. We have members going from committee to committee, presenting bills and listening to bills and things of that nature. So with that said, Madam Clerk, go ahead and take the roll.
Representatives Bricken, Bolso, Capley, Eldridge, Gant, Garrett, Grills, Harris, Lamberth, Littleton, Parkinson, Powell, Russell, Stevens, Todd, Vice Chairman Jernigan, Chairman Farmer. Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Members, does anyone have any personal orders, recognition, questions, comments before we get started? All right. With that said, we have, excuse me, I have Representative Bolso was blocking the view here. Representative Harris, you recognize, sir.
Thank you, Chairman. I do want to welcome to our committee some people from my district from UT Health Science are here, and I want them to stand and just wave their hands. All right. And as well as our circuit court judge for the 30th Judicial District, Ms. Mary Wagner is here. Judge Wagner is here, and I want to say thank you for being here as well, too.
All right. Thank you for that. Anyone else before we get started? All right. Good deal. Members, we do have a judicial confirmation hearing that we're going to take up today. This hearing's for the Tennessee Supreme Court position, and we do have Judge Mary Wagner here, and we certainly welcome you here, ma'am, along with your husband, Tom, and son, Ben. And I understand that you have a younger one that's at home with grandmother. So we just want to thank you all for being here today. And members, without objection, if we could go out of session, and I'll introduce Miss Erin Merrick with the governor's office. She'll come up, and folks, if you want to come up and sit down, however you'd like to do that. And members, without objection, we're going to go out of session, and we'll get started with this. And Miss Merrick, if you would, just go ahead and be sure your red light's on and the microphone's there, properly placed.
Good afternoon.
There you go.
Good afternoon. Erin Merrick, Chief Counsel to Governor Lee. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chairman, and members of the committee. I am thrilled today to introduce Governor Lee's nominee for the Tennessee Supreme Court, Judge Mary Wagner. Judge Wagner has been awarded for her excellence on the trial bench, where she demonstrates fastidious preparation, thoughtful inquiry, and judicial restraint to administer justice. And Governor Lee and I are confident that these habits will persist when she joins the Tennessee Supreme Court. Born and raised in Memphis, Judge Wagner attended the University of Colorado before returning home for law school at the University of Memphis. After graduating fourth in her class, she served as a law clerk on the Tennessee Court of Appeals. And then she next entered private practice, where she focused on general civil litigation and taught legal writing and oral advocacy at the University of Memphis Law School. She distinguished herself through her practice and her involvement in the legal community, and former Governor Haslam appointed Judge Wagner to the bench in 2016. Since then, she has served as the circuit court judge for the 30th Judicial District, which includes Shelby County, and she has won re-election to that position twice. In a moment, Judge Wagner will share her comments about her passion for state service and her commitment to the administration of justice, and then she will be available to this committee for questioning. I do want to note, however, that Judge Wagner may be prohibited from answering certain questions that you ask by the Code of Judicial Conduct. She is not trying to be evasive, but it's important to maintain our impartiality of our courts and to make her available to rule on certain issues that may come before her in her capacity as a justice of the Tennessee Supreme Court. So we thank you for understanding that limitation, and without further ado, Judge Mary Wagner.
Thank you, Judge Wagner, and you're properly recognized to make any opening comments you wish.
Is that better? Thank you. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chairman, and all the committee members. I appreciate your time and attention today, and I appreciate Ms. Merrick and those very kind introductory remarks, and certainly thank Governor Lee for this opportunity to be with you all today. If I could take a moment of personal privilege and recognize my husband, Tom, and our son, Ben, who are sitting behind me. And I can't forget our younger son, Will, and of course, my parents who are at home holding down the fort. It's truly a team effort to do what I do, and certainly couldn't do it without their support and cheerleading, but sacrifice as well. So I thank them. To tell you a little bit about myself and why I seek this appointment, and my passion for the law. I start every jury trial in Shelby County by welcoming the jurors and telling them how blessed we are to have the legal system that we have. I challenge them that they're going to learn something and they're going to enjoy the process. And so far, none of them have come and told me that I'm wrong. And so I do appreciate that. But that's a passion for the law and our legal system that I first learned as a young child growing up in the legal system and in the courtrooms. And it's a passion that I have been blessed to be a part of on all sides of the bench throughout my career. And it is that passion that leads me to seek this appointment. And when I thought about applying, I thought about what it is does a justice do? What is it to be a justice of the Tennessee Supreme Court? And I came up with two main roles. One is to be a scholar. Justices are committed to the deep study and analysis and research and consideration of the law. It's a very, in some ways, academic, but you're doing it in a very practical, real world application to real people and real lives. Some may call it boring, but it's something that makes my eyes light up and makes me enthusiastic, much in the same way sometimes that Ben lights up when he challenges me with a math question that I can't answer in my head, but he can. And so that is one aspect of the job that I'm very much looking forward to. The other aspect is our justices are ambassadors for the court, and they do that in several ways. You are not an advocate for a client, but you are an advocate for the law and our legal system and the appropriate way that the judges are supposed to rule on the law. They do that in many ways, but one is their commitment to the rule of law. It is also their decisions that they make and the quality of those decisions. It is also the administration of the lower courts in Tennessee and our administrative courts across the state. And finally, it's being the face with the public, and that's an aspect of my job that I truly love, because how does our public have confidence in our court system if they don't know who our judges are? And so interacting with the public in that way. And so the opportunity to make a positive impact on the legal system and the rule of law in Tennessee are the main reasons I seek to serve in this way. And it would truly be an honor of a lifetime if I'm able to serve my home state in this way. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Judge Wagner. Members, I'm going to open it up for questions. And first on the list, I have Representative Stevens. You're recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Judge Wagner, it's great to have you with us today. It's good to see you. For those of you who do not know, Judge Wagner was in my law school class with me at Memphis, and we've been friends for about 18 years now. Some of the, do what now? Some of the things you heard in her opening statement and some of the things you heard in the introduction, I can testify to. She's very intelligent. She's always prepared. She's always been fair, always been open-minded, very even-keeled. And I think you're going to do an excellent job as a Supreme Court justice. I'm very honored to be here today and to be part of this. And I think you're going to do our state a great job. I do have a couple of questions for you, though. If you would describe to this committee what your views are on just your judicial philosophy.
Of course. To me, a good judge or justice is one who is always fair and impartial, who is open-minded, and who is committed to the law. And that is, some may say, a textualist, looking at the law and what you adopt as a body, and taking the intent from the words that are there in the law and not looking for any discussion that may be behind the scenes.
President Stevens, any follow-up, sir?
And I do have one more question. Do you have any ideas for ways that we can improve relationships between the General Assembly and our judicial system?
You know, I have enjoyed greatly the last 2 days and getting to meet with many of you, and I think that is a big component of the court system, of having good relations with all the members of the General Assembly. And I hope you all, I think many of you have my cell phone number. If you don't, I'll get it to you. But I think those are important. Communication is very vital on things. So.
Representative Stevens?
That's all, Mr. Chairman. Congratulations. I look forward to voting for your confirmation.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next on the list, I have Representative Gant.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Judge Wagner, it's good to see you here today. And I don't have a question. I just have a comment about Judge Mary Wagner, and I've known her for a long time, and I think she's very well qualified, and she is definitely a role model that for young people to look up to that are seeking a career in our court system and our legal system. And I am proud to see her sitting here before us today. And I know she'll represent our courts very well, and she is somebody that is admirable and respected by many of her colleagues. And I'm pleased, Mr. Chairman and committee, I'm pleased to, at what point we get to put forth her second for her confirmation of this committee today.
Thank you, Representative Gant. Any follow-up there, Judge Wagner, to that?
Just thank you very much for your kind comments. I appreciate it.
All right. Next on the list, I have Representative Parkinson. Sir, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Judge, for being here. I just want to, more of a comment than anything, just want to tell you how proud I am of you. You know, we've been knowing each other for many years as well, and I've always said you were special, right? And you know, good to see your family here too. You know, and I just want to say how exciting this is for not just me personally, but for us in Shelby County. You know, to have you ascend to the highest court and you know, be there, and you've always exhibited, you know, the best in a person to me, and you know, I can't tell you enough how excited I am for you and how proud I am of you, you know, for what's about to happen. And you know, you got my vote. I wish I could scream it to the world, you know, but thank you for, you know, offering yourself, and thank you for being available for this position. We need you there. Thank you so much, Tim.
Next on the list, we have Representative Bolso. Sir, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, Judge Wagner. It's a pleasure to have you here. I noticed in your application for nomination that you mentioned that you developed a love and respect for the law at a young age. Could you tell us exactly when that occurred and how it occurred?
Yes. So I was raised, both my parents are lawyers. They're still practicing lawyers. And my grandfather was a lawyer. He passed in 2020, but he practiced until he was 87 years old. And he had to stop because he could no longer drive to the office. That was the only reason he stopped. But when I got too old to go to daycare, so 4th, 5th grade, my mother, I was the oldest of 3 children, decided it was best for me to come with her to work instead of staying at home by myself. And so I spent school holidays and summers in their office, a small business, 3 lawyers and a secretary or 2. And then I got a legal education, filing papers, typing documents, running to the courthouse, walking down 2nd Street in Memphis to go make the courthouse runs. And I got to see the law in action and really see how important of a role it plays in our society and how it can really be used to help people who need help. And so that was when I developed my love and respect for the law.
Representative Bolso, any follow-up, sir?
Just a few, Mr. Chairman. Have you had the opportunity to take Ben with you to some of your jury trials and allow him to develop the same respect for the law?
Ben has been in court. He's not been into a jury trial yet, but he has been in court, and I do try to expose both my boys to that as much as possible.
You also mentioned in your application that historic preservation is one of the community activities that you spend time in. Can you tell us a little bit about how you became involved with historic preservation?
So I guess it's an informal term, a little bit of my nerdy hobby. When I was young, used to spend hours with my grandfather doing family history. His family was from Wisconsin on that side of the family, and so that really developed my love for history. And I'm also married to a social studies history teacher too, so that helps too. But I got involved. A dear friend of mine was involved in the Daughters of the American Revolution. And so the work that they do through historical preservation, but also service to veterans and the activities of that club are the things that I do.
Representative Bolso.
Yeah, one final question. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could you just name for us a justice or a judge, living or dead, that we all might know, whom you look up to and emulate, and whom you might be like if you were in fact confirmed for nomination on the Supreme Court of Tennessee?
Okay, so I'd pick 2 if that's okay. Justice Scalia, I have enjoyed studying his work on legal writing and legal thought. And he's someone I used when I was teaching legal writing at the law school to teach the modes of legal writing. And so his work in that area, but also I love hearing about his relationships with Ruth Bader Ginsburg and how they were best friends. And sometimes they couldn't disagree more, but they were always kind and civil to each other. And he spent a lot of time with her, and they truly were strong friends. And I think that is the way that we should all be, and how we treat others and how we care for our friends, even if we disagree on some issues. Another one would be, I was reading a journal article this past January about Samuel Alito. And it described him, it was one of his colleagues from the circuit bench, and they listed 4 descriptions of him. He is someone who, his colleague said, always overly prepared. He is someone who writes beautifully. He is someone who can spot the key issues in the law in the cases that he's deciding. And he's someone who is committed to the law, even if the result he thinks is distasteful, but he has a commitment to that law. And so if at the end of my career, someone is describing me in those 4 ways, I would call it a success.
Representative Bolso, any follow-up? Okay, thank you. And next on the list, I have Chairman Russell. Sir, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Judge Wagner, for coming by the office and being here today. And look forward in supporting your appointment. And thank you for bringing Tom and Ben. And I guess the question I got is what advice would you give a new attorney just starting out?
Yes, so I have a couple law clerks that work with me that are law students. They work part-time. I tell them always that the first piece of advice they need is to guard their reputation. And that's their reputation for integrity and their reputation to producing quality work. Because those are vital, and they show that you are a good person, and they're very difficult to get back once you lose them.
Chairman Russell.
Very good, and I wish you much success. So, thank you.
All right, members, that's all I have for the list. Excuse me, I have Chair Lady Littleton. Ma'am, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And we met many, many years ago. I think we served on a committee together. In fact, I know that we did. And I just looked, I still do have your phone number. So I haven't used it lately. But anyway, so I'm looking very forward to voting yes for you. And I'm very proud that you are here today. So thank you.
Very good. Next on the list, I have Representative Garrett. Sir, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Judge, thank you for being here. I enjoyed meeting you. Feels like it was a week ago, but I think it was yesterday. And Senator Stevens stole my thunder. Oops, I'm sorry, Representative Stevens. I didn't mean to offend you, Representative Stevens. Sort of stole my question here. But one thing I wanted to thank you for doing this, and also thank your husband. And is that Ben back there?
Yes.
Ben, thank you for allowing your mom to serve in this capacity, which I'm going to be proud to vote for her. So we appreciate you being here, Ben. My question to you is this: many times, you know, people from the general public that go into court, they're scared to death. They don't know what's going on. They see the judge come up in a robe and they sit on top of that bench and they're just nervous, right? Because their rights in the criminal setting could be taken away, or even the civil setting, they don't know what's going to happen, right? They just don't know how judges kind of tend to think about cases and how it weighs on them. So my question to you, if you have one, is what has been the best decision that you've been proud of as a judge, and what has been one of the most difficult ones that you've had to make in a decision as you approach being a judge?
I'll start with the second question.
Okay.
So the most difficult decision, there's lots of difficult decisions, and those decisions, you're exactly right, do weigh on us as judges. And we worry about the outcomes of those decisions, regardless of the type of case. I had a case several years ago, it was a relocation case.
A parent type relocation?
Correct.
Okay.
The parent, a mother had remarried and was trying to move to further away. And the father opposed that. And at the time, the relocation statute, it has since been amended, but if the children spent the majority of the time with the mother or whatever parent, the court could not consider the best interest of the child. And so I heard all the evidence, I heard the dad's arguments, and I knew deep down this was not a good call. But the law required me to allow her to take her children and move away. It's a difficult decision too, because it ultimately did not work well for that child. There were some things that none of us anticipated that happened. And so that was a difficult decision, but the law required it. And so I did it, and I would do it again, because it's not about what I think, it's about what the law says. And so that would be a difficult case. And that the best decisions, it might be another child one. We've got lots of cases, torts and contracts, but I had a little boy who had been through some trauma. He'd lost a sibling to cancer. His parents were separated, and the parents were dealing with their own trauma, I think, and they weren't focused on him necessarily. And we got a guardian ad litem involved, and we got him gifted services. He was brilliant. And during a break, he drew me a picture in the jury room because I try not to have children in the courtroom unless absolutely necessary. So he was in the jury room, and I still have the picture he drew. But we were able to get him and his parents on the right track through some contentious litigation. And so seeing the positive outcomes and especially children doing better would be the most fulfilling cases.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much for letting us know how difficult it can be to make to a rapid decision, even though you still have to follow the law. So I really appreciate your comments on that. Mr. Chairman, that's all my questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Representative Garrett. Next, I have Leader Lamberth.
Thank you, and Judge, good to see you today. So we've seen a lot of big decisions from the court over the years, the U.S. Supreme Court, Heller, Bruin, all the way back to Youngstown v. Sawyer on textualist. And as you can imagine, we see a lot of judges that will come in here and say that they're textualists, that they follow textualism, that they're going to read the words that are on the page. Many of those decisions have said that judges should be interpreters of the law, not creators. And I think the best quote on this is, we are governed by laws, not the intentions of legislators. So my question is this. When you're going through that process and you're evaluating, or what you will be, you've done a lot of trial law, you've done a lot of trials, you've done that. But at the appellate level, when you were looking at the record and you were looking at the laws that we have passed here in this body, how would you go through that process? Again, not getting into specifics, obviously you can't do that. But when you're looking at something we've passed here to try to stay true to those textualist values, what's that process look like for you?
So I'm going to look at the law that you adopt and the plain meaning of that law as it would have been understood by a reader at the time it was adopted. And I'm going to look for the plain language, the plain meaning of that word. I'm not going to go beyond that. You all do the heavy lifting of making those policy decisions when you adopt the law. And certainly your process is valid, and the work you do in committees such as these and the statements you have to make to get to that law is important in that process. But as a judge, I look at the law that was adopted by the body.
Well, thank you for that. And I know we all appreciate that. I mean, the decisions I think that we've seen here in the legislative body that we would disagree with the most are when a judge gets to a decision, and you described this a while ago in not doing this, where a judge gets to a decision that they feel is right, but it isn't following the law. It's just getting to a decision that they want, and they become kind of super legislators in a courtroom in a robe instead of here in the people's house. So just if you see something, and I've recommended this to other judges over the years, and I think many of them have taken us up on this. If you're on the bench and you're seeing a law that's coming before you that you think we've gotten wrong, the best way to communicate with that to us is in dicta, and to make it crystal clear the decision of, hey, look, this is why we decided this. It was decided on the words that you all put on the page. And by the way, here's how you might be able to improve it. And then I have had judges in the past, once the case is over, many times, send us a little email that says, by the way, you might want to read this decision real close. And we never mind that at all. That's our responsibility then to go back in if we put the court in a difficult position and update those laws just like we do every year. So, Judge, I don't have the history with others that others on this committee do with you. We haven't known each other for years, but in the short time we've got to know each other, I have been very impressed and look forward to supporting you as you ascend to the Tennessee Supreme Court. I'm sure you'll serve us well there. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, Leader Lamberth, for that. Next on the list, I have Representative Powell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And first of all, let me say my colleagues from Shelby County speak very highly of you. So I want to commend you for that. Could you speak to the importance of the entire court system and the entire court process, from the smallest courts, the local courthouse, to the Supreme Court, and how you look at those decisions and appreciate, the entire court system from the lowest to the highest court?
Of course. So our court system, from municipal would maybe be the smallest, or general sessions all the way up to the Supreme Court, is hugely important in Tennessee. And that is one aspect of this job as a justice that I am looking forward to. There's the legal aspect, but there's also the administrative aspect of working with the AOC in the operation of the court system. And our courts are vitally important. And it doesn't matter if you have a $10 million lawsuit that takes me 3 weeks to try, or you have a half-hour trial. These are issues that greatly impact the lives of the litigants who are there before us. And I understand the seriousness of that with every case, and that it has a real-world practical effect, regardless of how big or how small it might be.
Representative Powell.
And I just want to have a follow-up question, kind of on the same vein, but a little bit different than Leader Lambert's question. Could you see a situation where the General Assembly passed a law that you might find to be unconstitutional or going against the Constitution? Or do you think that every law passed by the General Assembly is constitutional?
Is it automatically constitutional? Is that your question?
Well, yeah, my question is, could you envision a situation where a law is passed by the General Assembly that might be unconstitutional as it pertains to the state constitution or even the United States Constitution?
Certainly, I think that is the role and duty of the courts if a constitutional challenge is brought for us to address those concerns. And if I had an issue before me that I thought violated either the Tennessee or the U.S. Constitution, I promised you I will uphold the Tennessee and federal Constitution. I think there is a presumption in the law. You see commonly in case law that if you're looking at a statutory provision and there's two means of interpreting it, one that's constitutional and one that's not, then we go with the constitutional interpretation if it's supported by the plain language of the act.
President Powell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One final question. Is someone who represents oftentimes a minority opinion in the General Assembly, I've become increasingly concerned with political activism from the court. And so I think, unfortunately, our courts become so partisan that some of the beliefs that I grew up with about, Lady Justice being blind, I think are at risk. And I would just ask and hope that you would always take a look, and I know you probably do this now, but look at those minority opinions, those minority voices, and take those into consideration. Because although we might not represent the majority in this body, we do represent a lot of Tennesseans, and they have their own opinions. And so I hope that you will just always take that in consideration when you're looking at cases that come before you on the Supreme Court.
Thank you.
All right, members, that's all I have on the list. And I do want to say, I'd be remiss if I didn't, Judge Wagner, that your reputation certainly precedes you. It made your good and wonderful reputation, made it all the way to Sevier and Jefferson counties in East Tennessee from Memphis, a long way, and made it very well. And you come highly recommended from folks that I know and constituents from the other side of the state. So just want to thank you for being here, making yourself available to this committee for questions, allowing us to know a little bit about yourself, about your kids, your family, the most important part there. And thank you, Ms. Merrick, for being here as well. Members, I don't have anyone else on the list. Any objection for going back in session? I think we're finished with this portion of the hearing. So we're going to go ahead and gavel back into session. So thank you. All right, members, we're back in session. Do I have a Representative Stevens? You recognized?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that we confirm Judge Mary Wagner for the Tennessee Supreme Court.
And Representative Gant, you recognized?
And I will motion that on a second.
Very
Please.
good. And thank you. Members, we're voting whether or not to send Judge Mary Wagner to the full body to be heard with regard to her confirmation to the Tennessee State Supreme Court. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. Ayes have it. Congratulations, Ms. Wagner. Members, we have a calendar. Item 1, House Bill 2120 by Chairman Faison. Sir, you got a motion and a second. I'm looking at House Amendment 13928.
That is correct.
Members, I have a motion and a second on. You got a motion, you got a second. Sir, does this rewrite the bill?
No, sir. It's just a technical amendment.
Very good. Members, we want to go ahead and adopt this. It's a technical amendment. Any objection? Seeing none. All those in favor of adopting House Amendment 13928 to House Bill 2120 say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. Ayes have it. Now we're back on the bill as amended. You recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Committee, certainly good to be with you. This bill is simply taking the use of recreational purposes out of the public use definition for when you take a property for eminent domain. Right now, there's a standard in the TCA for things you can do when you take something for public use and use eminent domain. This bill would simply just say you can't do that for recreational purposes.
Very good. Thank you for the explanation. Members, any questions for Chairman Faison? Any questions? Seeing none. Question's been called. All in favor of sending House Bill 2120 to Finance, Ways and Means, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Ayes have it. Bill moves on. Brings us to item 2, House Bill 2113 by Representative Powers. You have a motion and a second, sir. I don't see an amendment traveling with this, so you're properly recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. House Bill 2113 is an anti-class action bill that makes Tennessee law consistent with the federal law. Right now, the legislation would shorten the statute of limitations for claims for unpaid wages, hours worked, overtime, minimum wage, salary, bonus, commissions, or other compensation owed to an employee or an independent contractor. The maximum statute of limitations under the Fair Labor Standards Act is 3 years. This bill simply shortens the statute of limitations from claims from 6 years to 3 years to make Tennessee law congruent with the statute of limitations under the FLSA. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I renew my motion.
Members, do we have any questions for Representative Powers? Representative Powell, you recognize.
Just one question. What is the discrepancy right now as exists between state and federal law? Like how long, what's the time length difference?
Representative Powers?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The difference right now is 6 years for federal law and 3 years for state law. And so we're trying to make it, 6 years for state law and 3 years, turn it around. And 3 years for federal law. We're just trying to make it congruent with what the federal law is.
Representative Powell? Good. Okay. Members, anyone else? Any questions, comments before we vote? Any objection to vote? Has in the House bill question's been called. Send House Bill 2113 to calendar and rules. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Ayes have it. Bill moves on. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Committee.
That brings us to item 3, House Bill 2303 by Chairman Carr. Sir, you've got a motion and second, and you're probably recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All this is just a cleanup bill. Our statute still says in the law when you get married, even at age 18, you got to bring your mother and father with you before you can get married. We're just cleaning that up, saying anybody of legal age can get married without their mother and father being present and signing for them. Now, if you're 17, you still have to have the mother and father, but we're just clearing that up in the code.
Very good. Thank you, Chairman Carr. Members, who have any questions for Chairman Carr? Are you ready to vote? Question's been called. All those in favor of sending House Bill 2303 to calendar and rules, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Ayes have it.
Thank you,
Bill-
Chairman and
Bill moves
committee.
on. Thank you, sir. Brings us to item 4, House Bill 2216 by Representative Whitson. So you got a motion and a second, and I have 2 amendments here. Do you want to adopt both? I've got 13903 and I have 14336.
Mr. Chairman, I just show amendment 014336.
Very good. Then we'll move forward with that. Members, I have a motion and a second. You got a motion and a second on the amendment. Does that amendment rewrite the bill?
Mr. Chairman, this amendment names the bill Danielle's Law and changes the effective date to be as soon as the legislation becomes law.
Very good. Members, do we have any objection to adopting this amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor of adopting House Amendment 14336 to House Bill 2216, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Ayes have it. Now we're back as on the bill as amended, and you're properly recognized.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. This legislation was brought to me by the Sexual Assault Center due to a young lady who experienced an assault and came to the Assault Center for help. Currently in statute, a person has 1 year to pursue civil action for sexual assault, but has 3 years for criminal charges. This legislation seeks to align the civil statute with the criminal statute. This bill will update the statute of limitations for sexual assault cases to be 3 years without a police report and 5 years with a police report. This allows survivors to have time to process the trauma and navigate the legal process. This bill only impacts those 18 years old or older. There have been cases where rape kits have not been processed within a year of the assault occurring, leaving survivors with no option to pursue civil action. For instance, Alabama gives 2 years for sexual assault and no time limit for rape. Arkansas gives 3 years for sexual assault and 15 years for rape. Kentucky gives 10 years for sexual assault and rape, and Georgia gives 4 years for sexual assault or rape. I appreciate the support of the Joyful Heart Foundation a national organization with a mission to heal, educate, and empower survivors of sexual assault for their support of this legislation. Mr. Chairman, I do have two witnesses here that would like to testify. First, I have the survivor here, Danielle, and also a civil attorney who has pursued these cases in court.
And thank you, Representative Whitson. We'd be happy to oblige. I do have Ms. Powell on the list that was submitted properly. I do not have anyone else, but on there. So happy to have her up.
That's correct, Mr. Chairman. I was wrong. You have one person on the list.
Thank you. Members, any objection going out of session hearing from Ms. Powell? Seeing none, we're going out of session. Ma'am? If you'd like, just have a seat anywhere up there, and just be sure that your red light is on the base there. And then you have 3 minutes. Just introduce yourself to the committee, and we'll have unlimited time for questions after that, okay?
Thank you for having me. My name is Danielle Pyle, and I am a rape survivor. I was raped nearly 3 years ago in my own home by a man I did not know. We had been out for a friend's celebration and for her birthday, and we came back to our neighborhood. This man, instead of driving from Midtown to Brentwood, he drove from Midtown to Bellevue to end his night. When it was time for me to go home, I said my goodbyes, and he wanted to walk me home. Being the Southern woman that I am, I accepted what I thought was his chivalry. He walked me 2 doors down, came in my house, and before I knew it, I was being sexually assaulted in my own room, in my own bed that I still have to sleep in to this day. I filed a formal police report with MMPD. I had a rape kit done at the sexual assault center. I cooperated in every stage of the process, and the detective on my case said he would get back with me after the DA's office had made their decision. 13 months later, I got a call from the MMPD saying that my file had been lost on a desk for 8 months, and that the DA's office had given their decision back in September. So I was raped in April, reported in April, received a decision 13 months later because my file was lost on a desk. When the detective called to tell me that what the decision was from the DA's office, which was that they weren't taking my case, he started to tell me that I had a civil option, and then paused and realized that it had been 13 months from the date of the assault. So there is no justice in my case, and I have made peace with that. I'm asking you today to extend the statute of civil limitations on which you can sue someone for a sexual violent crime. Survivors need more time than a year in this case. It's been nearly 3 years since my rape, and I've been telling my story over and over and over again. And it took me 3 years to be able to do that. You need time to process and heal from what has happened to you. And 1 year is just too short if you're also having the opportunity to pursue criminal charges as well. So I thank you for having me back. And if you have any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Powell. We appreciate you being here on multiple occasions now and sharing your history. You're a survivor, and we appreciate you being here. And you are making a difference. Just wanted you to know that. Members, any questions or comments for Ms. Powell? We have Representative Powell. Sorry, you recognize.
I just want to say that I really admire your courage and bravery to come here and your persistence. Certainly support the legislation, and I think it's incumbent upon all of us to make sure that we are, I mean, the situation you described, I mean, that happened with police force here in my city is totally unacceptable. and make sure that statewide we're dealing with these cases appropriately, timely, and making sure that we're funding what needs to take place so that these never are delayed and a situation like this occurs again. I actually can't even believe that we're having to extend this in a situation like you describe. It took so long, but also appreciate sometimes it's so devastating and emotionally traumatizing that it can take time to even want to move forward. So thank you again for your courage. Certainly appreciate this legislation, and you got a great sponsor here, and wish you all the best with your continued efforts, and not just for yourself but other survivors. And as a father, I also want to thank you for your bravery, because I know tragically this happens too often in our state. So thank you.
Yes, and if I could just respond quickly,
Go ahead.
that I- it's been nearly 3 years from this event, and I may not have found justice, but I kind of refuse to let anyone else be in this position. I had a rape kit done after my assault, and to this day, have no idea where it lives or if it's ever been tested. I did everything right in my case. I checked every box, and justice still failed me. So I refuse to let anyone else be in the same position.
Next up, Chair Lady Littleton, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for being here today and your bravery. And this bill, if we had passed it, a rapist could be in jail. So without your day in court, there could still be a rapist out there that could attack any of our children at any given time. So thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Members, I don't have anyone else on the list to ask any questions or have comments. We have any takers? All right. Thank you so much for being here
Thank you.
today. Members, without objection, we'll go back in session. Representative Whitson, you're recognized.
Thank
Questions
you,
been
Mr.
called.
Chairman and committee. Again, I appreciate the support that y'all has shown since we introduced this in subcommittee. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I renew my motion.
Very good. Thank you. Questions been called. Members, we're voting to send House Bill 2216 as amended to calendar and rules. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Ayes have it. Bill moves on.
Thank you,
sir.
committee.
And it looks like, Representative Whitson, you have item 5, House Bill 2453. Typically, I would have made this announcement at the beginning of the meeting, but this bill has been, you're asking this being rolled for 1 week?
1 week, yes, with your
All right.
permission, Mr.
Members, any objection? House Bill 2453 being rolled for 1 week? Seeing none.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 6, we have Chairman Boyd, House Bill 2267. Sir, you have a motion and a second, and I'm not seeing any amendments, and you're properly recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members. House Bill 2267 makes a couple of changes to the forcible entry and detainer action that's taken when a property owner or property manager takes possession of a property. It reduces the number of days from 15 to 7 that a general sessions judge may postpone a trial. And it also requires that a defendant must actually demonstrate to the clerk of courts that they have a bond, which is already required by law in the event that there is an appeal. Chairman, I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Chairman Boyd. Members, any questions for the chairman? Seeing none, are we ready to vote? Looks like we are. Any objection to sending House Bill 2267 to calendar and rules? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Ayes have it. Bill moves
Thank you,
on.
Chairman and committee.
Thank you. Brings to item 7, Representative Gillespie, House Bill 1822. Sir, you've got a motion and a second, and I don't see an amendment on this, so you're properly recognized.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman and committee. This bill is brought before you by the Attorney General, and it's pretty simple. It's just really clarifying the reports that are done in regards to wiretaps that local DA's offices have, the federal government requires, and what the AG's office does. And it's literally just taking all of those different dates and making it one. And with that, I can answer any questions.
Very good. And thank you, Representative Gillespie. Members, any questions for Representative Gillespie before we vote? Seeing none, any objection to vote? I hear the question on the bill. We're voting whether or not to send House Bill 1822 to calendar and rules. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Ayes have it. Bill moves on.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 8, House Bill 2404 by Representative Slater. sir. You've got a motion and a second, and I see House Amendment 13933. Is that?
That is correct.
And you've got a motion and a second on that amendment. Does that amendment rewrite the bill?
It deletes an entire section, yes.
Okay. Members, we want to go ahead and adopt the amendment and then allow Representative Slater to explain it from there. Any objection? Seeing none. We're voting to adopt House Amendment 13933 to House Bill 2404. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Ayes have it. Now we're back on the bill as amended, and you're recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And this bill comes to me from our juvenile court judge in Sumner County. And my understanding is that he has spoken with several other juvenile court judges. And then as amended, I've worked with DCS on the language of the bill. The bill does one thing as amended. It modifies one point in the definition of dependency and neglect. The change in definition would underscore that dependency and neglect begins at the point a case is filed, not at the time the case is decided. And so with that, I stand ready for questions.
Very good. Thank you for the explanation. Members, any questions for Representative Slater? Seeing none, we ready to vote? Any objection? Seeing none. Looks like we're ready to vote to send House Bill 2404 as amended to Finance, Ways, and Means. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Ayes have it.
Thank you,
Bill
committee
moves
and
on.
members.
Thank you, sir. Next, members, we have item 9, House Bill 1726 by Representative Gant. Sir, you have a motion and a second. You had one amendment here, and I don't believe you want to move forward with that. That was 14387. Is that correct?
No.
Members, as I understand, he does not want to move forward with that. I just want to get this in the right posture. And then I feel like it's my responsibility to disclose this to the committee. House Amendment by Representative Harris, House Amendment 15088, is not timely filed. However, when his assistant brought it to my office yesterday, I was in a meeting and my door was shut, and I feel like his assistant was being courteous and didn't interrupt the meeting, was physically in my office. So that amendment was not timely filed because of that. Otherwise, it would have been. So I'm just going to ask the committee to either we can, without objection, we can adopt this this amendment, or if the sponsor objects or the members would like us to have an up or down vote on it, I'd be happy either way. But I just felt like I wanted the committee to know that the circumstances surrounding this untimely filed amendment. Representative Parkinson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The sponsor of the amendment is not in the room at the moment. How do we proceed with that?
We can't. All right. Members? All right. So there's no motion. Representative Gant, you're recognized on House Bill 1726.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. What this bill does, I'm going to kind of give you a little background of where we came from and to where we currently are now. This bill was brought to Senator Watson and a constituent of his, and she and her family went through the entire Tennessee Department of Children's Services, DCS, foster care application process in 22-23. During the physical exam, she disclosed that the family was not vaccinated for flu and DTaP, which is pertussis, due to religious convictions, and submitted a letter of concern about their religious exemptions to DCS. They were denied fostering an infant due to their unvaccinated status. Senator Hensley introduced Senate Bill 1337 in February of 21. It was passed and signed into law May of 21 as Tennessee Public Chapter 375. It amended the law to not require immunization as a condition for adopting and fostering a child unless the child is under 18 months of age or has a significant medical need that necessitates a household being immunized. An amendment was added to Senate Bill 1337 to include the 18-month language. This amendment was not drafted with the bill sponsors and the Tennessee Department of Children's Services so as to not jeopardize the title funding that the state receives. What this bill does, Mr. Chairman and committee, is the bill would remove the prohibition of placing foster infants less than 18 months of age in homes with other non-vaccinated children / families. That is, the bill would allow an unvaccinated family to provide foster care for an infant 18 months old or less. Current law allows for fostering and adopting after 18 months if the family is vaccinated for flu and pertussis. It also expands the eligible pool of families for foster care and adoption. The state could benefit from having more caring available homes for placement of these children, in which we find that we have a huge need for this currently in the state. So this legislation is attempting to do just that. And Mr. Chairman, I will stand for any questions.
Thank you for that explanation, Representative Gant. Members, who have any questions for the sponsor? And I do have a couple, 3 people that have asked to be heard in support of this legislation. We want to go ahead and go to session and do that?
Sure.
All right, without objection. That brings us to, I have Amy Miller, Ms. Miller. And then, yeah, all 3 of you can come on up here. So I should have Ms. Miller, Dr. Jablowski, and if I butchered that, I apologize. And I have Dr. Mumpower. Is that correct? Excuse me, Mumper. All right, folks, just make sure you're all once you intend to speak, just be sure that red light's on at the base of the microphone there. Be sure the microphone's pointed in front of your mouth there. It picks up better sound. And then each of you will have 3 minutes independently to speak. So I'll start with, I'm guessing that's Ms. Miller.
Yes.
Yes. All right. You're recognized.
I'm Amy Miller. I'm a mom, and this committee is a little emotional today, so hopefully I'll get through this. I'm a mom who originally brought this to the attention of the General Assembly, this issue. So I have a special interest in that based off of my friend who did not want to get a vaccine, and so I'm here to support this bill. But I also represent Children's Health Defense today. And with that being said, I had a few things to say, but I'm going to read something that explains when someone says they're unvaccinated for flu or pertussis, what that truly means, and then I'll pass it off. This is a letter from a person who specifically dealt with DCS. Out of the 70-odd children and babies my husband and I have fostered in 17 years as being foster parents for the state of Tennessee, several have been clinically classified as drug babies. We personally adopted 2 of these babies labeled as medically fragile with failure to thrive, as well as 3 other children with special needs who were removed from their drug-related homes. Feeling satisfied in our efforts for working in the Tennessee foster care system and properly raise our now 6 adopted children, we closed our home for approximately 10 years. We tell you this not to brag, but to demonstrate the concern and passion we feel in helping these special needs children. Last year, a DCS social worker we had worked with on occasion encouraged us to reopen our homes, stating that there was an exigency for recruiting new foster parents to handle the now ever-increasing load of what she termed as fentanyl-addicted babies. Her selling point was that the department had many babies coming in while all the existing foster homes are filled to capacity, that the Department of Children's Services was in dire need of opening new foster homes. A good portion of these newborn babies diagnosed with neonatal opiate withdrawal syndrome, formerly known as NAS, not many foster parents are willing to risk taking care of these types of babies, along with existing low quantity, and in some cases, low quality of emergency care homes available in the region of Tennessee, which finds DCS sadly lacking to meet the demand. My husband and I decided to go with Omni Visions, an agency that takes in special cases from DCS, and notified them that we desired newborns to 4 years of age, medically fragile babies. After months of classes, going through everything, drug testing, background investigation, setting up the crib, we were being approved in home study final phase. The final stage in process, that is when we were informed of DCS's policy stating we were not compliant with current adult flu shots. We could not care for any children under the age of 18 months. The whole point of our desire to help out in the Tennessee foster care system was now shot down due to a technicality in us refusing to place harm in our own bodies. Apparently, DCS considers that foster parents not getting a flu shot as being classified as being more harmful as the drugs and neglect that these precious babies have been subjected to in utero. It is interesting.
Ma'am, that's
Okay.
what we got there. Let's go a
Okay.
little bit earlier. So how much do you have left?
Well, I just have a closing paragraph that
Go ahead.
she had watched all of the formal testimony for this bill running through. And she said, of all the years babies and children we labored in our foster care system, not once did this become an issue. Our own adopted children, who were at one time deemed as a failure to thrive and even considered to be medically frail due to the drugs by the medical practice of the state of Tennessee, are proof enough for our own purposes in that each are now growing and thriving in the education system. So unvaccinated also might mean I have the pertussis shot, but I don't have the flu shot. And now you've just denied a loving home.
Thank you.
So
And I'll just, I guess, would y'all just like to go ahead and just kind of present, and then we can have members will just have questions for our guests. We can do that.
Yeah.
Doctor,
Certainly.
go ahead. If you would,
My-
sir, just introduce yourself to the committee, and in that way, we'll be in business there. And you have
Sure.
3 minutes.
My name is Dr. Carl Jablanowski. I have a PhD in biomedical and health informatics, and I'm here to represent Children's Health Defense. I'm going to discuss the scientific literature on vaccination for pertussis, or whooping cough, that it protects the recipient of the vaccine from the symptoms, but they can still contract it and transmit it. There are two formulations of the pertussis vaccine. They both contain aluminum, which is a neurotoxin, and they both contain formaldehyde, which is carcinogenic and toxic to the respiratory system, central nervous system, optic nerve, kidney, liver, heart, spleen, and blood. One of those vaccines additionally contains polysorbate 80, which is a carcinogen. A study produced by the FDA and published in a prestigious journal said the vaccine fails to prevent colonization, which is a bacteria infection and growing in your respiratory system, or transmission. Another review said all children who are primed with the vaccine will be more susceptible to pertussis throughout their lifetimes. A third study, which was co-authored by Tennessee's very own Dr. Catherine Edwards, Vanderbilt University School of Medicine, professor of pediatric infectious disease. She is an internationally recognized expert in vaccinology with numerous publications in the field of pertussis. The study reads, quote, "Pertussis vaccines do not prevent colonization. Consequently, they do not reduce the circulation of B. pertussis and do not exert any herd immunity effect. These findings at least partially explain the resurgence of pertussis." End quote. The article didn't get it quite right. It's not that the vaccine doesn't exert any herd immunity effect. It has a negative herd immunity effect, as the vaccinated will continue to be susceptible to carrying and retransmitting the bacteria. If you assume that there is a 90% herd immunity threshold that you must reach for someone who is exposed to the bacteria to not then retransmit it, once you have vaccinated 10% of the population, you make herd immunity impossible. Another study showed that 65 to 76% of all pertussis cases come from fully or partially vaccinated. The original law's intention is to implement what is called a cocooning strategy, where you surround the vulnerable by the strong. A study from Houston tested this strategy by implementing a standing order that all new mothers get the vaccine. They looked at 7.5 years before this intervention and almost 1.5 years during the intervention. And during that time, the cases of pertussis doubled and infant mortality for pertussis tripled. To summarize, it's toxic, it doesn't prevent transmission, it makes herd immunity impossible. Studies have shown that it harms babies, and it should not be used to prevent a family from fostering or adopting. Thank you.
Very good. This is almost perfect timing there, sir. Dr. Mumper. Oh, ma'am, make sure your red light is on so we can hear you, please. Is it? Is this better? Yeah. Maybe adjust that microphone there. I think sometimes
Oh,
there.
do I need to be on?
There you go. You got it now.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
You got it.
I'm Elizabeth Mumper. I'm a pediatrician. I've been for 44 years. I've given vaccines every working day and also taken care of a lot of children with vaccine injury. I'm here to argue that if a family is otherwise well qualified to be a foster family, using their informed consent to make a conscious decision to decline a flu vaccine, either for sincerely held religious beliefs or from a risk-benefit standpoint, should be honored. I have three main points. One is that flu vaccine is not particularly effective. Only twice in the last 12 years has it hit the 50% efficacy mark. In the olden days, we used to require a vaccine to hit at least 50% efficacy to be approved, but the flu vaccine usually comes in between 33 and 45% efficacy. Furthermore, repeated flu vaccines actually blunt the efficacy of the vaccine. Number two, when you look at large populations that either receive a flu vaccine or do not, there is no difference in mortality or severity of the flu. That is if the studies are done by people who do not have conflicts of interest, such as the people that manufacture these vaccines. Number three, all vaccines and all medical interventions include side effects, and side effects for flu vaccine are more common in women than men. About 0.6% of them are severe. So there's about a 1 in 200 chance of a severe side effect with each flu vaccine. These can include things like narcolepsy, Guillain-Barré, which is an ascending paralysis, convulsions, problems with the neurologic system, encephalomyelitis, and a whole laundry list of others. So my point is that declining a flu vaccine should not disqualify a family from providing this very needed service to the children in Tennessee. Infants less than 6 months of age who die from flu, the risk is 0.00000088, as opposed to the risk of the people taking the flu vaccine, which I've told you is 0.6, and that is CDC's own data. Even Dr. Fauci has written a paper published in January of 2023 recognizing the failure of classic vaccines to help with respiratory illnesses and calling for a complete revamping. So thank you very much for your attention.
And thank you. Members, do we have anyone have any questions for our guests? I have Chairman Grills. You recognize?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I just want to just throw this question at anyone who wants to answer it. Someone called me on my way up here Monday, and they were in the process of trying to adopt. And the vaccination status of the child they already have came into question in the adoption process. Is that something that happens on a regular basis to y'all's knowledge? And if so, is that just through the agency or is that a state issue? Maybe
I'm not the total appropriate person to answer
Okay.
that, but from the population of friendships and mothers, yes, it does apply to adoption and foster care, that this vaccination status.
But is that a agency issue or is that a Department of Children's Service issue or is that a Department of Health issue?
They'll have to answer that.
Okay, I'm sorry. Thank you.
And members, we do have DCS available for any questions that you may have. So if we need be. All right, members, anyone else, any questions? Chair Lady Littleton, you're recognized, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could you kind of tell us what a baby that's born, what it goes through with fentanyl in its system, the withdrawal, and how hard it is to take care of one of those babies?
I feel like perhaps I should answer that as the pediatrician. They tend to be very, very irritable, difficult to soothe, difficult to feed. And one obvious point is that the mother who is herself having a drug problem is going to be extremely stressed trying to provide that. So the foster families who are willing to take these babies on, I think deserve our support because they potentially are in for months of irritability and potentially significant neurodevelopmental problems down the road.
Thank you.
Any follow-up, Chair Lady? You good? Members, anyone else? Any questions, comments for our guests? Seeing none? All right. Thank you for all y'all for being here so much. You're excused. Members, any objection going back into session? Do we need to hear from DCS? Okay. Back in session. All right. Back on the bill. Representative Gant.
Mr. Chairman, I'll just close with, what this bill is doing is it's solving a solution to a problem that we have here in the state by allowing for religious and moral exemptions to vaccination for foster families wishing to foster and adopt children under the age of 18 months and open the door to a large, loving group of new foster and adoptive homes.
And thank you for that explanation, Representative Capley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the sponsors, this is a great piece of legislation. I think it's absolutely ridiculous that this is going on. Obviously, you know, we're going to fight for families. We're going to fight for parents. And I just want to congratulate you on bringing this forward. I'm looking forward to signing on to it. And that's all I got. Thank you.
All right, that's all I have on the list. We ready to vote? Any objection? All right. All those in favor of sending House Bill 1726 to calendar and roll, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Ayes have it. If you want to be recorded as a no, see the clerk. Brings to item 10, House Bill 590, Chair Lady Littleton. You got a motion and a second, ma'am. We have House Amendment to 14007. Members? So you got a motion and a second on the amendment. Members want to go ahead and adopt that amendment to get this bill whole. Any objection? Seeing none. All those in favor of adopting House Amendment 14007 to House Bill 590, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Ayes have it. Now we're back on the bill as amended. Chair Lady, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill, as amended, authorizes the Department of Children's Services to include in the permanency plan of a child who is in foster care for at least 6 months as a result of abuse or neglect, the requirement that the parent complete trauma-informed education prior to the child being returned, authorizes DCS to work with nonprofit organizations to develop training materials and delivery pathways, which may be via electronic means at no additional cost to the state, effective July the 1st, 2025.
Very good. Question's been called. Any objection? It's been withdrawn. All those in favor of voting to send House Bill 590 as amended to calendar roll, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Ayes have it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee.
Members, I want to bring your attention to Representative Todd. You're recognized. Chairman
Thank
Todd,
you, Mr.
excuse me.
Chairman. I just wanted to recognize some visitors that we have in the room. We've got a lot of visitors today, very popular committee, thanks to our fine chairman. But I wanted to especially recognize some from West Tennessee, especially my district. We have Josiah Yelverton, Natalia Cardenas, Logan Melton, Anderson Deere, Brody Wilson, Hayden Brooks, Rodney Harrison, Gavin Crawford, Sarah, Nora, Sophie, Carson, and Tristan Hardy, and my good friend Trey Cleek. Just make them feel welcome today.
All right, members, that brings us to the end of the calendar. I appreciate everyone's participation today, and without objection, we're adjourned for a week. See you next week.